In 1821, a man walked into London's highest society banking halls and pulled off the most audacious con job in human history. He didn't rob a bank, he didn't steal a crown jewel, and he didn't forge a signature. Instead, he made hundreds of wealthy investors hand over their life savings by selling them land in a country that did not exist. Meet Gregor MacGregor. To the British public, he was a decorated war hero, a brilliant general, and a man of absolute honor. In reality, he was a masterclass in weaponized confidence. Covered in self-awarded military medals and speaking with an accent so posh it could cure a debt, MacGregor announced to London's elite that he had just been appointed the cazique, or sovereign prince, of a stunning tropical paradise in Central America called Poyais. According to MacGregor's beautifully printed brochures, Poyais wasn't just a country, it was a literal utopia. He claimed the capital city had grand European architecture. The soil was so fertile you could harvest crops 3 times a year, and the rivers were quite literally overflowing with chunks of solid gold. It was the perfect investment for wealthy bankers wanting land and normal citizens wanting a fresh start. Now, you might think people would ask for proof, but MacGregor understood psychological warfare. He didn't just tell them about Poyais. He printed official Poyaisian currency in London, opened a Poyaisian land office in Scotland, and even commissioned a 350-page guidebook detailing the country's laws and customs under a fake name. By the time he was done, people weren't just buying land. They were changing their actual British pounds into completely worthless Poyaisian play money. Gregor MacGregor didn't just stop at selling invisible dirt. He realized that if you're going to invent a country, you might as well invent a government. He began interviewing wealthy elites for high-paying positions in the Poyaisian civil service. Want to be a top-ranking general? Just pay for your official commission papers right here. But the true dark brilliance of the scam was how he targeted everyday people. MacGregor focused heavily on his fellow Scotsmen. Scotland had recently endured severe economic hardships, and the promise of a sunny, tax-free paradise where crops grew practically overnight was irresistible. Hardworking families sold their ancestral lands, gave up their family businesses, and converted every single penny they owned into MacGregor's beautifully engraved and completely useless Poyaisian currency. By 1822, MacGregor raised £200,000. 2 ships, the Honduras Packet and Kennersley Castle, set sail with 250 hopeful settlers. They waved goodbye, completely oblivious that they were sailing straight into a death trap. In early 1823, after a grueling 2-month voyage across the Atlantic, the ships finally reached the coast of Honduras. The settlers rushed to the deck, eager to lay eyes on the grand city of Poyais. They expected a bustling port, stone government buildings, and the comfortable estates they had purchased. Instead, they saw nothing, just an endless, silent expanse of dense, mosquito-infested jungle swamp. No roads, no buildings, no civilization at all. But here's the most terrifying part of the human mind. The settlers refused to believe they had been conned. They were so deeply blinded by MacGregor's charm that they assumed they had simply landed on the wrong part of the coast. The newly appointed Poyaisian officials even put on their fancy official uniforms, stepped off the boats, and began setting up a crude camp in the mud. They literally sat in a pouring tropical rainstorm, waiting for a governor who was currently thousands of miles away, living in luxury off their money. Then, reality hit. The rainy season arrived with a vengeance, bringing with it malaria, yellow fever, and starvation. The Poyaisian play money they traded their lives for couldn't buy food from the local indigenous tribes, who only accepted actual silver. Weakened, sick, and completely trapped in a nightmare, the settlers began to die, one by one. By the time a passing British ship accidentally spotted the camp months later, a scam cooked up in a cozy London office had turned into an absolute graveyard. When the British Navy finally evacuated the survivors, only 50 of the original 250 settlers made it back alive. The scandal absolutely rocked London. The British government was furious, the banks were ruined, and the police immediately launched a manhunt for the Prince of Poyais. But Gregor MacGregor didn't panic. Before the law could knock on his door, he quietly packed his millions, crossed the English Channel, and slipped right into Paris. Now, any sane criminal would take their fortune, change their name, and retire to a quiet island. Not MacGregor. Within months of arriving in France, he opened a brand new Poyaisian land office, right in the middle of Paris. He didn't even bother changing the name of the country. He printed new brochures in French, started pitching to wealthy French investors, and was genuinely on the verge of sending a whole new ship of unsuspecting French settlers to the exact same deadly swamp. Fortunately, the French authorities were slightly more cynical than the British. They noticed a sudden, massive influx of people applying for passports to a country no one had ever heard of. They arrested MacGregor, put him on trial, and in a twist that defines his entire life, his lawyers were so brilliant that he was completely acquitted of all charges. MacGregor eventually moved to Venezuela, where he was welcomed as a retired military hero and died peacefully in a comfortable bed, proving that if you're going to lie, you might as well make it big enough to map.